diagnosis.
You always have to lie with a straight face. And then
20th of October, 1909, East Ridge, Tennessee, right at the border to Georgia. A team of FBI agents is positioned along a road. Their mission is to intercept a truck carrying dangerous goods. When it crosses the border, they stop the suspicious truck. Without hesitation, they confiscate the entire load, 60 barrels of Coca-Cola syrup. The contents were adulterated with an addictive and harmful substance, caffeine. 100 years later, the world looks pretty different. Starbucks, Monster, Mountain Dew, and pills. At least 80% of the world's population regularly consumes caffeine. You probably have some in your blood right now. Maybe you can't fall asleep, and that's why you're watching this video.
Monster Energy! Put it in your body and ask questions later.
One scientist calls our caffeine consumption one of the longest, largest unsupervised drug studies ever conducted on the human race. Although caffeine is one of the most studied substances in the world, there are always new findings. Some companies realized very early on how much power this white powder entails, and they have repeatedly played down its effects. Caffeine is a global billion-dollar business. How has a drug that is taken for granted today managed to conquer the whole world? And what dangers does it bring?
The world's most widely used mood-altering drug.
Is the coffee all right?
Nothing like a Coke.
I take too much. I get withdrawals when I don't.
A cup of coffee is part of the study routine for many. Often, it's the sole motivator to keep on reading and learning. The platform Brilliant makes the studying so exciting that you might even be able to skip one.
Please skip for me. Thank you. Thank you.
Caffeine is weird. Plants use caffeine to protect themselves from predators. It is found in coffee beans, cacao beans, and tea leaves. In its pure form, it is a white powder, tastes bitter, and a bit soapy. A 1/16 of a teaspoon will properly wake you up in the morning. A 1/4 of a teaspoon will make your heart race, cause sweating and anxiety. A tablespoon would kill you. However, moderate coffee consumption can even be healthy.
What? No way. What? That doesn't make any sense. Dude, chat. I thought the LD50 for caffeine is ridiculous.
What is moderate? Like 1 cup every 2 days or once a day?
White powder, tastes bitter and a bit soapy. A 1/16 of a teaspoon will properly wake you up in the morning. A 1/4 of a teaspoon will make your heart race, cause sweating and anxiety. A tablespoon would kill you. However, moderate coffee consumption can even be healthy. It lowers the risk of cancer, cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, Parkinson's disease, dementia, and likely even depression. People love caffeine and have consumed it for several centuries. Europe in the Middle Ages. Monsters are still monsters. We have a hearty beer soup for breakfast, a glass of beer for lunch, and of course beer for dinner. Everyone drinks beer, always. Not necessarily because of the alcohol, it contains little anyways, but because it tastes better than water. The average British drinks 3 liters a day, including children. In the 16th century, a hot black drink from the Middle East amazes Europeans. It looks different than beer, it tastes different than beer, and it has a different effect than beer. Coffee drinkers are soon seen as productive and bourgeois, whereas beer drinkers are considered lazy and comfortable. In 1700, there were already 3,000 coffee houses in London. Trade, literature, science, and philosophy flourished there. Some historians even claim that the Age of Enlightenment and industrialization would not have been possible without coffee.
True.
Meanwhile, coffee is an extremely controversial topic at the time. Charles II believes that his people could plan his coup while hooked on coffee. He therefore bans all coffee houses. The public outcry is so great that he revokes the ban just a few days later. Frederick the Great bans coffee roasters. To combat the flourishing black market, the Prussian king hires 400 so-called coffee sniffers to track down illegal coffee roasters. The ban is lifted immediately after his death. No caffeine ban in history was successful in the long run. The world's largest beverage manufacturer of today also made sure of this. Coca-Cola was invented by a pharmacist called John Pemberton. It was initially advertised as a medicine. It's said to cure headaches, hysteria, and melancholy. But above all, Coca-Cola does one thing. It wakes you up because it contains cocaine and caffeine.
Yeah.
Coca-Cola soon has to remove the cocaine, but it still contains caffeine, plenty of it. At the beginning of the 20th century, the drink has as much caffeine as today's energy drinks. Caffeine has been the enemy of one man from the very beginning, Harvey Washington Wiley. He's the head of the Bureau of Chemistry, the predecessor of the powerful Food and Drug Administration. He cannot believe that children as young as 4 are drinking cola. In his opinion, the substance is just as addictive as opium. He declares war on Coca-Cola and orders the FBI to confiscate a shipment of the evil drink. A spectacular court...
Imagine the offices at the time that had real Coca-Cola at the time, but they probably outperformed everybody by a flat, massive margin. They were probably balling the fuck out.
A spectacular court case develops that will pave the way for caffeinated drinks forever. The entire United States is watching.
It's
the soon-to-be most
Coca-Cola.
powerful government in the world against the
Coca-Cola.
soon-to-be largest beverage manufacturer in the world, Coca-Cola. Wiley and his office called more than 20 witnesses, including doctors, scientists, and regular Coke drinkers. In their closing statement, they confidently said caffeine is a dangerous drug that could be even regarded as poisonous.
All Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola quickly commissions a study itself, as there are virtually no caffeine studies on humans at the time. They hire a young psychologist, give him a lot of money, and have him carry out a number of experiments in just a few weeks. The young scientist delivers exonerating results. His conclusion in court: caffeine is harmless. Even better, caffeine has a physical and mental performance-enhancing effect. Jackpot. Coca-Cola wins. Later, however, there is an out-of-court settlement, and Coca-Cola reduces its caffeine content. But what remains in the public eye is that Coca-Cola won, and caffeine is a wonder drug with no side effects. And so begins a century of unrestrained caffeine consumption.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck, to be honest.
Red Bull gives you wings.
In the USA, black filter coffee and caffeinated soft drinks initially take off. Then, in the 90s, Starbucks overtakes the drip coffee. The recipe for success? A roast that makes the coffee taste less bitter. Sugar, cream, and very large portions with a matching amount of caffeine. And just when people thought there couldn't be any more caffeine and sugar in a drink, energy drinks entered the scene. In 1987, the first Red Bull can is launched on the market. 10 years later, there are countless suppliers who outdo each other with larger cans and even more caffeine. In some cases, there are even 700 milliliter cans. Before you realize it, it's 2024 and caffeine is everywhere.
That's DJ.
An industry worth hundreds of billions. It's been 100 years since Coca-Cola's court case, and in the meantime, it became evident that the wonder drug may
like
have a few side effects after all.
They make you feel like shit. They make me sick, man.
First of all, caffeine is not a dangerous evil drug.
Better,
it does not ruin lives or destroy families, although there are cases of caffeine poisoning, emergency room visits, and even deaths. These are extremely rare. According to experts, adults can safely drink a caffeine equivalent of 4 cups of coffee or 2 Monster energy drinks every day. As a teenager, about half as much, or even just a quarter. That's only considering the caffeine. Monster energy is of course super unhealthy. We wouldn't recommend drinking 1 Monster a day. Some people are particularly sensitive to caffeine. Their heart might start to race, or they break out in a sweat after just 1 cup of coffee. This is genetically determined. Others can still seem to sleep like a baby after a double espresso for dessert. The dosage one can take is individual. But even with harmless amounts of caffeine, there are hidden dangers. In one experiment, scientists gave test subjects a soft drink with a new flavor. One with caffeine, one without. They didn't know which was which.
Okay, dude, chat, death from caffeine, chat, is, I was right. Pretty hard to achieve it. Dude, 150 milligrams per kilogram. Brother, that is a fuck-ass ton. That's a fuck ton. If your coffee's like 50, 40 maybe, right? You cannot achieve this. You will die from all the other sources. Everything else, except for the caffeine, in that coffee is gonna kill you before the coffee is gonna kill you. Bro, you're gonna have fucking water poisoning or whatever. You're gonna have everything else. Like, this is insane.
True, probably.
The one with caffeine was the clear favorite. Although the caffeine level in Coca-Cola is so low, it still has a noticeable effect.
You know, at a lower level, caffeine just sort of makes you feel good. It gives you a little bit of a boost.
And even this small boost makes us choose the...
So I think he's correct.
Water poisoning!
I would place my bet on that.
Huh? That doesn't exist?
Caffeinated soft drink more frequently.
You might not even notice that subtle boost, but you will be more likely to pick up that product again than, say, an uncaffeinated product that didn't make you feel good.
This is Murray Carpenter, journalist and author of the book Caffeinated. Our body likes caffeine so much that it unconsciously favors almost anything with added caffeine. In one experiment, participants even loved caffeinated yogurt over decaf yogurt. Caffeine can definitely be physically addictive. according to Dr. Roland Griffiths, one of the leading researchers in the field.
The drug that more people in the world are dependent on is caffeine, but it's the world's most widely used mood-altering drug, and it turns out that it does produce physical and psychological dependence.
Chad, how is that possible? If it takes about like 30 minutes, 45 minutes for caffeine to kick in, that somebody will prefer that in a test for placebo. Like, or whatever the fuck.
What is this?
Isn't that kind of insane? Like, if there's a delay between consumption and you're reacting to it, I mean, then it doesn't. Your body doesn't really think, oh yeah, it's that. That's not what you think about.
According to Griffiths, the mild addiction develops even with small daily doses, a small cup of coffee every day. This little addiction pays off for the industry. 8 of the 10 most popular soft drinks in the US have added caffeine. Caffeine unconsciously leads people to consume more sugar, and sugar is quite unhealthy. Coca-Cola claims that they need caffeine for the flavor of their Coke. In fact, bitter substances can round off the flavor, but you could also use many other bitter substances for this. Perhaps one that is not addictive, even in small quantities. Scientific blind tastings have also shown that the vast majority of people cannot taste caffeine in Coca-Cola. Nonetheless, the beverage conglomerate sticks to the taste argument.
Now, I think when Coca-Cola has said that, I would have to say it's disingenuous, because Coca-Cola scientists know full well everything that we know about caffeine.
Energy drinks have just as much sugar as Coke, but roughly 3 times as much caffeine. For most adults, this is not a problem if they don't overdo it. In Europe, however, 2 out of 3 teenagers and even 1 in 5 children consume energy drinks. In the US, 1 in 3 teenagers consumes energy drinks. Minors tolerate caffeine much worse than adults and are much more sensitive. Studies show that too much energy drink can have harmful side effects for young people.
Dann wurden bei diesen jungen, gesunden Erwachsenen adverse Effekte beobachtet, also wie Herzrasen, Angstzustände, Nervosität und auch Veränderungen im EKG.
There is evidence that long-term energy drink consumption can lead to cardiovascular problems among children and adolescents. Unfortunately, however, there are still no conclusive studies on this. Consumer advocates and pediatrician associations are demanding stricter rules, such as a complete ban on advertising energy drinks to teenagers and children. These dangers of caffeinated drinks have not been taken seriously for a long time, thanks in part to the multi-million-dollar lobbying efforts of soft drink and energy drink companies. One of the most important lobby groups is the American Beverage Association, which was founded in 1919. Behind it are Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, and many others. They fund scientists who confirm their views on caffeine and sugar. For example, the group argues against stricter regulation of energy drinks for children and teenagers. Lobbying, a slight addiction, and above all, the awakening, performance-enhancing effect. All of this contributed to the massive success of caffeine. Why should we question a miracle drug that allows us to become more productive within a few minutes? Caffeine is perfect for the hyper-fast, performance-oriented times we live in. But it's also a time in which it's become increasingly difficult for many people to calm down and relax. It's easy to forget, but physical and mental rest and recovery are extremely important for our well-being, and caffeine actively opposes it to some extent. Caffeine blocks the absorption of the neurotransmitter adenosine. Adenosine tells us that we are tired. On caffeine, we do not receive this message. The body wants to rest, but we feel awake. For quite some time, actually. About 5 hours after a cup of coffee, half of the caffeine we consumed is still in our body.
If you have coffee at even if you don't have coffee in the morning, you should never drink a coffee past 5, 6 p.m. Your caffeine past 5 or 6, you're guaranteed that you won't be able to sleep at your normal times,
For 12 hours, a quarter of the dose is still in our system. If you drink a large latte at 2 p.m., you'll still have an equivalent of half a can of Red Bull in your system at 2 a.m. Caffeine makes you fall asleep later and wakes you up earlier. It also destroys your deep sleep, the sleep phase that is most important for recovery and restoration for the next day. We wake up tired in the morning, even though we have slept for a solid 7 to 8 hours. And what helps against tiredness in the morning?
Oh shit, here we go again.
Coffee is often the solution to the problem it has created. People drink coffee in the morning to compensate for their coffee-induced sleep deficit.
Ooh, actually,
you can get into
wait 90 minutes when you wake up before caffeine.
Yeah.
If you don't wait 90 minutes before your caffeine, you're subject to getting the opposite effect of energy. You get the opposite. You have to wait for it. Otherwise, you become sleepy. Not kidding.
For their coffee-induced sleep deficit.
Yeah. Always the solution to this. Any type of if you feel like shit in the morning, do not take anything to relieve your shit. Just go through the day feeling like complete ass, and you'll be fine later.
You can get into a sort of vicious cycle.
Even though it feels like shit,
temporary coffee withdrawal is easy for most people.
It's real.
But there are still.
It's not 20 minutes. It's more than that. It's like 60. I don't know how it is. It's like between 60 and plus.
1 to 2 hours, I think.
Still withdrawal symptoms. These include headaches, tiredness, mood swings, and concentration difficulties.
It's not
they can occur after just 12 hours and last for.
It disrupts your cycle. So when you wake up, you make a certain hormone that triggers you waking up. I think like sunlight help produce that hormone, right? But if you drink coffee too early, you're going to rely on the caffeine to wake up. So the next day, you're not going to be able to wake up properly. You're going to feel tired because your body is used to having the caffeine to wake up.
5 to 7 days. A few years ago, caffeine withdrawal was included as a mental disorder in the Diagnostic Manual of American Psychiatrists. Several studies suggest that people with a high caffeine consumption are more prone to long-term fatigue. For the same wakening effect, they need to consume more and more caffeine. Experts recommend
eliminating caffeine, say 6 or 7 hours before bedtime, seems to be a very good habit.
Caffeine transformed a society of heavy drinkers into a society of wakeful, clear-thinking, productive coffee drinkers. Large international corporations use the addictive effect.
Since we're going to hear this opinion, here's my opinion. The world is competitive as fuck, okay? And if you don't have some sort of like healthy imbalance or like compromises for energy, you lose. That's just how the world works. True. You lose. In a very competitive world, if you don't try to get to people's productiveness or whatever, you lose. It's what it is. True. You will lose. Or you have a diminished chance.
By the way, he's not saying you need coffee or drugs for this. You need energy. That's not the only way you get it. You can get it through more ways. If you take a walk, maybe. If you if you have a good mindset, you can get more energy. You just need to find a way to get more energy.
Chances by a pretty fair margin.
And coffee can be one of those.
On other people.
It's an easy one.
To make liquid sugar even more attractive. They disguise, play down, and lobby. They also accept the risk of potentially damaging the health of children and young people. Today, caffeine is the drug of our time, without any excessive side effects. But the subtle undertone of caffeine is always, you don't need to rest when you're tired, just have a coffee. But it's more important than ever to listen to the signs of fatigue of your own body from time to time and relax.
Stop saying it. It's just how the world works.
J. Robert.
I'm 27. How's that? I can't argue.
What's not one of those? It's alcohol. Alcohol is poison and is bad for you every way. You might feel a little bit good for 1 hour after
how
drinking.
Is that proof for anything?
You're gonna feel like shit for the rest of the day.
It's just how the world works. You lose.
So,
I mean, if you want to lose, you go ahead. But
trash,
saying,
man. It's just poison.
People that take compromises, unfortunately, get ahead. It's just what it is. The fuck is all you? Okay, here it comes.
So caffeine has very few downsides.
X on the
beat, a lot of other drugs. That's why it's used so much, of course.
Anyone knows that boy?
And it takes barely any time to make it.
I don't know. He's just so.
If you want to get in a good mindset, you're gonna probably have to waste a lot of time relaxing and not doing anything productive. So you're not really gonna get much out of that except being happier. The same with exercise or anything like that. Being healthy, it all takes time. Caffeine is easy. That's all I wanted to say.